I invite everyone to listen with a completely open mind. If one listens with a completely open mind, just by that means, conviction will dawn in your own experience about what I am saying here today. Only forever flawless wisdom awareness is doing everything. Just like sky cannot be burned or destroyed, so forever stainless wisdom awareness, which is doing everything, cannot be burned or destroyed in any way. It's completely indestructible. As awareness is doing everything and is indestructible, cannot be affected in any way, it's impossible for there to be anyone who can suffer. Suffering comes about due to non-recognition of awareness that is the basis and substance of all labels. In order to reach a definitive conclusion about what I'm saying, it's necessary for there to be a complete understanding of the basis of both a personal identity and other labels associated with a personal identity. Personal identity itself is a point of view or label, and everything that seems to be associated with a personal identity is also a label. So if we're going to take ourselves to be a personal identity who has a lot of thoughts, emotions, and experiences, which are all labels or words, then in order to really understand ourselves, we need to know the ultimate meaning or the authentic source of that personal identity and those labels that we use all the time. In order to find the elephant, the easiest approach is to follow the footsteps of the elephant. Elephants are very large. Have you ever seen one? They're enormous. They really weigh a lot. So wherever they step, they leave quite a footprint. If it rains, it forms a small puddle. So it's a big footprint. And the footprint of the elephant is very, very obvious. In the same way, the footprint of awareness in our sensory experience is very obvious. The footprint of awareness in our sensory experience, the footprint of awareness that is the basis of all labels, the luster of awareness that is the basis of all labels, is found in the complete ease of being. That's it. And that is found in one of two ways, either through listening over and over again to what is really true about each of us, rather than listening to all the labels and points of view about everything until conviction dawns. And the other approach is to just rest as that awareness that is the basis of each label until awareness becomes totally obvious and evident at all times, night and day. Very simple, very straightforward, very easy, totally and completely accessible to everyone. No one and nothing left out. No special ways or means to reach awareness as a destination, as there is no one going anywhere, there could be no one headed towards a destination of freedom. When we rest as awareness, we rest as the freedom that is absolute in the immediacy of each perception, no matter what that is. Now, yesterday we talked about the personal identity, and we talked about how the idea of a personal identity comes about, how the point of view of a personal identity comes about. So I'll briefly review that now. We looked into how we become familiar with ourselves as a personal identity, how we substantialize ourselves as a personal identity, and then through that separate ourselves from others, and then show our separation from others through competing and showing our abilities in order to further prove that we are somebody. And through this process, we develop within ourselves disharmony and disunity, and naturally then we also develop disharmony and disunity with others. So now I'll give an example of that. Say, someone walks into the room and we look at that person. The usual process that occurs is that we start to have thoughts about that person. Oh, she's has her hair in a ponytail, she's wearing a brown sweatshirt with a hood, and she has white skin, and she's about 28 and or maybe younger. And so all these things just naturally start going on. This is all part of the process by which we've substantialized ourselves first as being a lot of different points of view, our gender, our name, our hairdo, the clothes we wear, our age, whatever it might be. Once we begin to substantialize ourselves this way, without understanding forever stainless awareness that is the basis of all those perceptions about ourselves, then we automatically do the same thing with others. So whatever we see, whoever we see, we attribute a lot of points of view to it in the same way that we're attributing points of view to ourselves. Now back to the footprints of the elephant. Now if we find the footprints of the elephant, then we follow the footprints of the elephant only. We don't try a lot of other things to find the elephant. If we see the footprints of the elephant, then just through following the footprints of the elephant, we easily find the elephant. The elephant's already there and we know it because we see its footprints. But if we try a lot of other things to try to find the elephant, oh, the footprints are there, but so what? Instead, I'm going to meditate for 30 years to try to find the elephant. Or I'm going to do whatever it is to try to find the elephant. I'm going to travel to India to try to find the elephant there, even though the footprints of the elephant are somewhere else, so Africa or wherever it might be. I think I'll go to India instead to see if I can locate this elephant I'm looking for there. So you see, this is how a doer engages in doing something in which a doer cannot be proven to exist. As all there is flawless, stainless awareness, all doing is that of flawless, stainless awareness. There's never been a doer doing anything. When we look at the origin of a personal identity, what we see is that we've learned certain things about ourselves. We weren't born knowing these things. So when we were born as spontaneous awareness only, without any words or concepts. So we need to ask ourselves how this personal identity came upon, how the impression of a personal identity came upon flawless, stainless awareness, and how it became solid and stable, seemingly solid and stable. And when we just realize that we were born as awareness, and that then we were introduced to ideas about who we are, it becomes easy to see how this identity came upon us. None of us were born knowing our name. We weren't born with a name. We weren't born knowing that we have a gender identity. We weren't born knowing that we have a skin color or an eye color. We weren't born knowing that we have a nationality. We weren't born knowing that we depend on a body to exist. We weren't born knowing that we depend on any of the elements to exist, like earth, fire, water, and air. We weren't born knowing that we depend on thoughts to exist. We weren't born knowing that we depend on emotions to exist. We weren't born knowing that we depend on the universe or the cosmos to exist. We were born as we are, stainless and flawless from the beginningless beginning, with innate wisdom that never holds to anything. Innate wisdom, just like stainless sky, never got stuck anywhere. It never got stuck in any word or concept about being anything. When we rest as awareness that is the basis of the assumption that we have a personal identity, then we learn everything we need to know about that personal identity. Otherwise, we'll be lost in a lot of tangents about what that personal identity is. We'll say, oh, this personal identity, it really is something. And in order to realize my true nature, I need to smash this personal identity out of existence. Like a glass, I need to throw it against the wall and smash it to smithereens until it can't be seen anymore. Where there's never been a personal identity, all this involvement with a personal identity just leads to more substantialization of a personal identity. So if we're examining our thoughts and trying to make them into better thoughts, and we're examining our emotions and trying to make them into better emotions, and examining our experiences and trying to make them into better, more positive, more right experiences, then all of that involvement reinforces the sense of a personal identity. The most that can happen with that approach is to neutralize thoughts, emotions, and experiences. However, the neutralization of thoughts, emotions, and experiences all exists within causation. It exists within time and space. And what we are, that which can never be burned or destroyed in any way, is completely beyond causation, completely beyond time and space. When we rest as the essence of this personal identity that has been with us and as us, and is the only doing within us from the beginningless beginning, then we become more and more familiar with what is at the basis of the personal identity. We no longer get so lost in the points of view about who we've taken ourselves to be. When we rest as awareness that is the essence of all biographical data that we've taken on, then more and more we are simply acknowledging the essential reality of what we are. Over and over again, for short moments, repeated many times, we acknowledge our essential reality, and as we do so, it becomes more and more obvious. This essential reality has been with us from the beginning and was never born, has never lived, and will never die. This essential reality cannot be affected in any way by anything that appears within it. No matter what the word is, the thought, the emotion, or the experience, indestructible awareness that is at the basis of everything cannot be affected in any way. If there is the assumption that we're affected in some way by what appears, it's only an assumption. It's something that we've learned, and that too is a label. that is being applied to a personal identity that is assumed to exist. When we look at this idea of a personal identity and exactly how it comes about, we follow the footprints of understanding to the elephant of awareness. We can, through understanding, deconstruct this idea of a personal identity and who we've taken ourselves to be. We can deconstruct it, and in that, conviction will dawn. We really don't need to do anything. If we feel like sometimes we get too stirred up for conviction to be obvious, then all we need do is rest as the awareness that is at the basis of the personal identity. Rest as that awareness for short moments, repeated many times until it becomes obvious. The substantialization of a personal identity only occurs thought by thought. That's it. It occurs thought by thought. It's never been a thing. It's never been a thing that has a self-essence. It's never been a thing that has a self-origination that occurred at birth. It's never been a thing that could be destroyed or affected in any way. This is very important to understand. This is really all that we need to understand. In resting as the awareness that is the source of the pure phenomena of each thought, then it becomes more and more obvious that awareness is the ultimate meaning and the ultimate aspect of the thought. Otherwise, we'll get lost in the label. Each thought has two aspects: the label, whatever we've been using to describe it, and this ultimate essence that is the entirety of its basic space. In understanding the personal identity as insubstantial in its own right, in other words, it has no own being, it has no self-essence, it has no self-origination. In understanding this so conclusively about the personal identity, it's easier for us to rest as awareness and not hold on to or try to keep a personal identity. As stated, a personal identity only seems to be thought by thought. When thought by thought we make the most important choice to rest as the awareness that is the basis or essence of all thoughts, then the reality of our true being, the ease of our true being, becomes more and more obvious. Now, what about all these labels? We've looked at the personal identity a little bit, and we've concluded that the personal identity has no self-origination, no self-essence, no own being. What about all the other labels that are subsequent to this label, this point of view of the personal identity? All the other labels are equal to the personal identity label or point of view. So all points of view are included within this all-encompassing pure view of awareness. And all the points of view, whether it's a personal identity or any of the other labels or points of view we're applying to the point of view of a personal identity, all these are absolutely equal in being the pure phenomena of the originally pure basic space of awareness. When we look into all the other labels that we apply to ourselves, all the thoughts, emotions, and experiences we have, we need to know what those labels apply to and how we can find the essence of what those labels apply to. So let's take something like our head or the mountain out there. When we look at our head, what can we definitively say about our head? Where is the headness of the head located in the head? Is the headness of the head located in the skin covering the head? No, we can't really say we can find headness there. And what about the structure, the bone structure inside the head? Is headness located in that bone structure? And what about inside the bone structure, the brain and such? Can we find headness in the brain anywhere? Is it located anywhere there? And what if we look even closer and we look at the blood vessels inside the head? Can we find headness in the blood vessels? No, we can't really find headness there either. And what if we put the head under an electron microscope? Are we going to find the headness of the head and the electrons that are the particles that make up the head? No, we can't find headness there either. And then if we put the head in a particle accelerator and we see that there's nothing there but space, what have we found out about the headness of the head? It's comprised of pure space. It's comprised of pure space. It's comprised of aware pure space. It's never been made into anything called a head. Even if we take all the composite particles of the head and put them in the linear accelerator, we still can't find the headness of the head, even in all the composite particles. And such is the case with all labels, no matter what they are. We can go through the process of the same process I just described with any word or label. We can apply it to the mountain or the tiger or the elephant or our emotions or our thoughts or anything at all. Through this simple process of understanding, we can come to a definitive conclusion that no label, no matter what it is, has a self-essence or self-identity. Then we can ask ourselves, well, what about all my experiences that I have, my sensations that occur through the eye and the ears and all the other senses? Okay, then let's look a little bit at these labels, the eyes, called the eyes and the ears, and ask ourselves, well, what is it really that sees and what is it that hears? We'll just look at those two senses rather than going into all of them. When we ask ourselves what sees, many of us have learned that it's our eyes that sees. And through a biological process involving the eyeballs and the optic nerve and the brain, then we see. So, where exactly does seeing occur in any of that I've just described that we learn that we are? Does seeing occur anywhere in the eyeball? Does it occur in the retina? Does it occur in the pupil? Does it occur in the iris? Can we really say that seeing occurs in the optic nerve? Can we really say that seeing occurs in the brain? And can we say that it occurs in a composite of all of these? If you still think seeing occurs there, then what sees when you're asleep at night in a dream? So you see, when we look into all these things that we've taken to be so solid and so stable, it's easier to see that what sees is beyond the eye. It's beyond the biological mechanism. It's beyond what's going on with the body and its senses. When we're asleep at night and our eyes are completely closed, we have all kinds of things occur in the dream. And what is it that is the doing of the dreaming, the doing of the waking, and the doing of the sleeping equally? It's awareness. The doing of seeing is awareness. All seeing occurs due to awareness and nothing else. And the same with the ears. What is it that hears? Where exactly is hearing occurring? Is it occurring in the skin of the ear? Is it occurring in the cartilage of the ear? Is it occurring in the blood vessels and corpuscles of the ear? Is it occurring in the auditory canal or in the eardrum? And if you still think that hearing is occurring there and with the process in the brain, then what hears when you're sound asleep at night? When none of the sensory mechanisms that you've taken to be the doer are alive and active. What hears in that dream? Is it the ear and all its processes that's hearing all of the dream images and the fantastic events that are going on that are completely beyond anything that could ever be imagined? So in this way, we can come to a conclusive understanding both about personal identity and the labels that we use to describe the fearful consequences associated with having a personal identity. Because once we decide we have a personal identity, we have all kinds of fearful consequences associated with being that personal identity. If we are thinking that a personal identity is holdable and keepable in some way, then we immediately establish personal consequences, and many of them are very fearful. So we get lost in a lifestyle of hope and fear, of hoping that certain things will happen and fearing that they won't, or fearing that certain things will happen and hoping that they won't. So it's very important to come to a conclusive understanding about the insubstantiality of all points of view, the insubstantiality of all labels, whether it's the personal identity point of view or any other label. All of these, no matter what they are, cannot be found to have a self-essence. No label, no point of view can be found to have its own being, its own entity. It is not a thing in and of itself that can somehow control other things. And this is very important for us to understand, because sometimes we have hugely disturbing emotions that arise. And these hugely disturbing emotions are something that we have learned affect us in some way, that they can in fact disturb us. We've learned that that is the case. And through repetition of that over and over and over again, we impulsively act on disturbing states within us and engage in all kinds of actions based on those disturbing states, whatever they are. When those disturbing states come up and we rest as awareness that is the basis of those disturbing states, whether they're thoughts, emotions, bodily sensations, when we rest, even though everything is screaming, I'm not resting, when we just rest with no need to describe anything that's occurring, with no need to seek anything in a label, then more and more we become familiar with the wisdom at the basis of all appearances, and less do we feel taken out of the vitality of life by appearances. We've only learned that all appearances are something in and of themselves. That is something that is a learned habit, and that is it. It has no substance in its own right. And just as we acknowledged over and over again through repetition that we are a personal identity and that our thoughts, emotions, and experiences can bring either hopeful or fearful consequences, when we acknowledge awareness over and over again, the awareness at the basis, that becomes obvious, just as it's become seemingly dormant through reinforcing that we have a personal identity with hopeful and fearful consequences. This is very important to understand. When we take ourselves to be a personal identity and then we want to find out about the true nature of our being, very often our starting point is, well, there's something wrong with this personal identity. It's flawed, and I need to get rid of that flawed person that I am. But as stainless awareness is flawless from the beginningless beginning, there's never been anything within awareness that has been flawed. So to try to tweak and fiddle around with and transform and analyze something that doesn't exist, a personal identity, all we do is perpetuate the idea of a personal identity over and over and over again. As stainless awareness is that which is doing everything, there's absolutely nothing that is excluded from that awareness. So there's no special way that one needs to speak or act or be. We don't need to rule out the use of the word I or me or mine or take on any kind of contrived way of speaking or thinking of being or being. When we repeatedly return to the completely perfect ease of being, the natural rest that is at the basis of everything, over and over again, wisdom dawns within us, wisdom that requires no contrived activity, no contrived conduct, no contrived thinking, no contrived emoting. Wisdom requires no thinking. It requires absolutely no thinking. Wisdom is the clear light of wisdom that is the basic space of awareness that pervades everything. When we rest as that clear light of wisdom, it becomes more and more obvious. And that's the only way we can find our own wisdom. Our own wisdom is innate. It's already accomplished. We don't need to do anything to get it. We don't need to force it, try to find it, try to head to a destination, try to engage in all kinds of things to make it come about. It already is. When we rest as that wisdom awareness that's at the basis, the clear light of wisdom becomes more and more obvious. And we can count on this without fail. We can count on this without fail. If it seems too easy compared to everything else you've heard, then, and you don't understand what I'm saying immediately, then please come back. Come back at least 6 times and see if conviction will dawn. And even if you think, oh, she's crazy, what is she talking about? Boy, she's really a lunatic. If this were true, then it couldn't possibly be true. It's just way too easy. Well, then, please come back at least 6 times and just open up your mind and see if something is sparked within you. You know, I've been called all kinds of things, so it doesn't matter to me what you think about me. You know, some people say I'm a lunatic and I'm crazy. Other people say I'm the Einstein of consciousness. But, you know, to me, it's all equal. It doesn't matter. All there is wisdom awareness appearing as lunatics and Einsteins. So, you know, to me, it's all absolutely equal. I don't need to take myself to be anything. I'm completely contented as I am. So throw anything you want at me. Anything you think about me is okay by me. But back to conviction dawning. Just to place yourself in this circumstance where undeniable truth is spoken about, even if you think it is a little weird or oddball. Come back again and again. Come at least 6 times. And in that, it's very likely that a spark, at least a spark, if not a wildfire of understanding, will awaken in you. You see, who we are, it's already given. It's already super complete in itself. Everything about us is benevolent and superbly helpful. And when we have that reinforced over and over again in a very simple way, it begins to dawn on us, just the way this idea of a personal identity dawned on us through repetition. We're all okay. That's really all I'm saying. We're all okay. No one's ever been un-okay. And if you think that you're un-okay or that you need to change in some way to be okay, then please understand that nothing need be done. Your okayness will dawn within you. And that okayness, more and more, will be a perfect expression of wisdom and compassion. The wisdom and compassion that's already complete in here. Wisdom awareness is absolutely timeless. It's not stuck anywhere in time or in any kind of history or historical figure. Wisdom awareness is naturally appearing right here. And everything that's ever been, as it is totally timeless, is self-occurring in this moment, simultaneously inherent in this moment. It's just like you could say, oh, you know, suddenly I had an urge to go to India, and I just knew I had to go to India. And then what happens usually then is we try to establish a lot of causes and effects related to that urge. I've got to get to India. So I must have this urge to go to India because something's wrong with me, and I'm going to find something there that's going to make me whole and complete. Or, you know, I've got to go to India to visit my parents, or because I want to live there, whatever it is. But all of this attribution of cause and effect, it has no substance of its own. You see, there all these labels that we apply to everything, they've never applied to anything. This is what we're sharing here today. This is the message we're sharing here today. And when we stop holding to these labels, then more and more we have a decisive experience of our own super completeness. The whole idea that we're not super complete comes about when thoughts appear, and then we use our awareness, we make the choice to use our awareness to hold on to or try to keep those thoughts and decide that they're either good or bad. And then through discriminating like that, we reject some thoughts and accept others. So the whole process of feeling ill at ease comes about just through that simple choice, the most important choice we can ever make. What is important about wisdom awareness? What is important about wisdom awareness to us as human beings is that our life is a precious opportunity to realize wisdom awareness. And in that way, we're of tremendous benefit to ourselves at least. But what is naturally occurring in gaining familiarity with our own wisdom awareness is that by being of such tremendous benefit to ourselves, we automatically then want to be of benefit to others. We desperately need this in our world today. We need it for ourselves, and we need it for others. We need to take this matter of the nature of our being all the way. We need to take it all the way to the potent benefit that is inseparable from it. And in this way, we won't get lost in any thought. We won't get lost in any state. We'll be able to tap in to the wisdom that is required to solve the tremendous problems facing our species and the tremendous problems caused by our species to other beings and the planet we live on. We can't deny that we have all kinds of problems and they need to be solved, and they can only be solved with the wisdom solution. So in this way we can come together as a grassroots global community, gaining familiarity with wisdom awareness to solve our individual problems and the problems of the world. Getting into rarefied states of altered consciousness has not solved the problems of the world. Only wisdom awareness beyond time and space and causality has no attachment to any convention. It's not bound by time and space or causation. It sees solutions to problems that have never been able to be solved. Formerly unsolvable problems are solvable in wisdom awareness. Problems like 85% of the world's people not having enough food to eat. Problems like environmental degradation. Problems like endless wars and conflicts between peoples. Problems like nuclear missiles pointed here, there, and everywhere. When we rest as awareness, when we rest as wisdom awareness that is the basis of everything, first of all, we end the war within ourselves. And what is the war within ourselves? It's the constant machine-like response to our own being, where we're looking at our thoughts, emotions, and experiences and constantly trying to categorize them into good ones to keep and bad ones to get rid of. This is living a machine-like robotic existence. All of the thoughts, all of the emotions, all of the experiences, whether they're past, present, or future, are equal in being primordially pure. Their label does not make them pure or impure. We've already looked at that definitively today. All thoughts, emotions, and experiences are equally pure, and no labels, no matter how many are put together, are the source of wisdom. Wisdom is beyond words and concepts. It's beyond labels. When we persist to label ourselves and others, we engage in this machine-like war within ourselves, where we say that certain of our appearances, our thoughts, emotions, and experiences are good and others are bad. But beyond all that field of causation, of time and space that looks at everything as good and bad or good and evil, is wisdom that is beyond all extremes of labels. Wisdom doesn't need anything to be good. It's already wholly positive in and of itself. So I invite all of you and all beings everywhere to stop, to come to a complete stop with the addiction to points of view, the addiction to labeling everything. Come to a complete stop and enrich yourself and enrich the world, enrich all beings with a wisdom awareness that is at the basis of everything. No one is dependent on any label. You are absolutely not dependent on any label to be. You are, regardless. Being is regardless of labels. It needs no label whatsoever, and all labels are self-sourced in it. The only self-essence of any label is forever flawless awareness. So why not go right to the root? Why not look at everything from the root of awareness rather than through the smoggy, foggy filters of labels? The essence of your own being doesn't need anything to prop it up. It simply is. Relax and enjoy. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask?
I would like to ask you, like, sometimes like really strong emotions come up, like, let's say fear or anything else, and it's like fear of doing something or of acting or yeah, and it's like, and to try to overcome them, it seems to be just impossible, and the only thing I can do is just to let them be. But sometimes I find it really easy for myself. It's like, I don't know, just to, let's say, give a good cry, just to cry a little bit, and it feels like more at ease, you know. And so I'm just thinking, is it like am I just like applying antidotes, or is it like applying an antidote, or it's fine if I just ease a little and then I can rest more easily with them?
Is it fine to cry when you feel afraid, you're asking?
No, it's like, am I using, like, when I have a good cry, is it like an antidote I'm using for an emotion, for that, or should I or shouldn't I?
So is it an antidote to cry when you feel tremendously fearful? That's a good question. There are only 4 things to do with appearances, and only one of them doesn't require a doer. The first 3 that require a doer are, 1, to indulge the point of view. The second is to avoid the point of view. So indulgence would be the fear comes up and all of a sudden you're totally afraid. And you start thinking about why you're afraid. Oh, I'm afraid because there are all these nuclear missiles and the world might come to an end. And pretty soon you start to think about, oh, how did this come about? All these countries are at war. People just can't get along. This is a terrible world we live in. I don't like it here. I should kill myself or move to Australia, or, you know. So all these points of view are indulged. The fear is indulged and it's described, and then we really get afraid. So we started out with just the thought of fear, and then it spun out into this free fall of terror. Okay, that's the first thing to do with the appearance of fear. The second thing to do with the appearance of fear is to avoid it like the plague. So fear comes up and you say, okay, fear. Now I have to purify this fear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into solitude, or I'm going to become celibate. And in that way, I'm going to overcome all this fear I feel about everything. So that's avoidance of the fear. And, you know, that might neutralize the fear, but it doesn't completely resolve the fear. And then the third approach would be to replace the fear with a positive state, an antidote. And so the fear comes up, and the fear is recognized as fear, and you say to yourself, okay, I'm afraid. I've got to do good works. I'm going to go out and help somebody, and that way I'm going to get rid of the fear. Or I'm going to cultivate happy thoughts, and in that way I'm going to get rid of the fear. So I'm going to get on the internet and stay on for about 3 or 4 hours and numb out by looking up all the causes of fear. Which will only lead to being much more afraid. Having a lot more points of view. So those are the first 3 things to do with fear. The fourth is rest as awareness. And as awareness, see all as awareness until all is awareness. Only the fourth does not have a doer. The fourth rests in the source of the fear. And in doing so, more and more, the fear is seen as the dynamic energy of awareness. It's inseparable from awareness, just like the color blue is inseparable from the sky. They've never been separated from each other. They're not two. The fear and its purity as fear and originally pure awareness are not two. The entire basic space of the fear is primordially pure awareness, but that can only be recognized and decisively experienced in and as awareness. It can't be experienced through indulging, avoiding, or replacing the fear with another state. Now, the matter of crying. The crying, it just sounds like another spontaneous appearance. There was the fear, and then that was the appearance of the point of view of fear. Then there was the appearance of the crying, the point of view of crying. Crying, it's just a spontaneous expression. It too is insubstantial of an independent identity. Crying is insubstantial and identityless. Fear is insubstantial and identityless. But if the crying and the fear are taken to really mean something significant, then they will. To get totally familiar with the totally pristine ground that is the basis of both requires just resting as awareness, even if there are unrestful bodily sensations like crying or pain or anything else, emotional pain. Continue to rest as awareness, and not separating out from what's happening, but just notice that the awareness and whatever is appearing are inseparable. Nothing needs to be done about whatever is appearing. It will vanish naturally in and of itself, like a line drawn in water or the flight path of a bird in the sky. They're their own undoing. All these appearances are their own undoing. The dynamic energy of awareness is pure space, aware pure space. It's impossible to hold on to. So even if you tried to hold on to the fear forever and work yourself up into a state of fear that was so tremendous you'd explode, you wouldn't be able to do so. It's impossible. So all this seeming terror and discontent is a fabrication. Now, if you want to take it to be real, please. I wouldn't suggest it, but go right ahead. But I do suggest that even if you think I'm a total kook, that you come back here at least 6 times. What could it hurt? You spend 6 hours of your life here. It's only taking all these disturbing emotions to be so real, and then the impulse to act upon them feeds these emotions. It feeds them, and it makes them seem like they are real, and that they are the basis for action, and that they're the only basis for knowing how to decide what to do, the only basis for knowing what is right or what is wrong. But if they were the basis for knowing what is right and wrong, then we as a species would have accumulated a lot of right by now, and we haven't. We haven't at all. We haven't come up to a positive conclusion. So why not rely on the wisdom that puts all of these in a definitive reality of complete wise action that leads to something beneficial. Today, not only at one time there were many simple understandings about emotional states and thoughts, even when there were attempts to purify them. There were very simple understandings about these things, and a lot of support from small communities where people live. But today now, the descriptions of what causes things like disturbing emotions, we can buy one book and it tells us what to do with disturbing emotions. We feel hopeful when we read it. Oh, this is going to work. I'm going to apply this. Oh, it works today. I feel so free. This is it. I'm happy forever. We read the book. We feel hopeful. We set it aside, and a few days later, we're back to the same grind. Or we're just applying antidotes. Then we reach for another self-help book. So we can spend our whole life buying books and applying these antidotes to disturbing emotions, trying to apply point of view to point of view in order to make it better. Resting as awareness requires no books. And it completely resolves all disturbing states, no matter what they are. And it isn't only the negative emotions that are disturbing. All emotions are disturbing. Because the good ones we want to hold on to and we can't. And the disturbing ones we want to get rid of and we can't. So all emotions are disturbing. When we rest as a wisdom awareness that is the basis of all pure phenomena, then we get familiar with what is really true. Now, that's up to each of us, but anyone who has learned to brush their teeth or tie their shoes can gain familiarity with wisdom. No matter how powerful these emotional states may be, and I'm not talking as a philosopher. I'm talking as someone who's been there. So I've had incredibly difficult emotional states. Very, very disturbing emotional states. Very disturbing experiences. I'll match my experiences to your disturbing experiences any day. You come and tell me all your disturbing experiences and I'll tell you mine, and I can guarantee that you will be convinced you can overcome yours by resting as awareness. Anything you've done that's negative, I've done worse. So I can also match that to anything. You see, but by resting as the awareness that is the basis of everything, I was able to gain familiarity with that in a way that it became permanent at all times. And this wasn't just of benefit to me, it's been of benefit to many, and is of benefit to increasing numbers. So you see, I'm just an ordinary person, no different than anyone here. And these disturbing states that I sought to overcome through all kinds of means, philosophy, psychology, intellectual understanding, doing good works, accumulating virtue, praying, all of these things, they didn't help at all when I got into a particularly disturbing situation 25 years ago. None of it worked. None of the strategies I developed work. I couldn't find help in any books or in anything I'd learned or in any person I knew. And in the midst of that, I realized that all of this turmoil and disturbance, it all had the same underlying basis. that was not separate from it. And that underlying basis is a pure space, a vast, infinite, pure space that is totally timeless. And I didn't really even call it any of that. I just knew it brought relief. When I rested as that, I had complete relief from all labels, whether they were positive or negative. And the more that I rested as that, the more there was the naturally occurring appearance of a warm sense of well-being, a warm sense of ease that pervaded everything. More and more, there was the ability to be in all situations without impediment. So why would I want to go back to what didn't work? Why would I want to go back to disturbing states? There's no reason to do so whatsoever. To continue to go to disturbing states and think that they're real it's really the definition of insanity. Insanity is to do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. As much as we might like to talk about our emotional states and that they're disturbing and this is who we are, in order to understand me, I've got to tell you about all my disturbing emotional states, or oh yes, my disturbing emotional states, they're impure, I must purify them, naughty emotional states. These all just perpetuate. They either perpetuate or neutralize the states themselves. There's no knowledge other than wisdom knowledge in these states. If we think we find any knowledge there, it's just another point of view. The only true knowledge is the clear light of wisdom knowledge that is the basic space of the state itself. When we rest as that, then we come to a definitive realization about what's going on, one that is so beneficial to us. Because when we look at these states, what we really want to do is stop them. We don't want them anymore. They don't feel good. They feel painful. They hurt. And they not only affect us in a painful, hurtful way, but our relationships with others. We see this and we want to stop it. That's the natural urge to freedom, to want to stop these. But we've found, all of us, that by examining them and applying antidotes, we either only neutralize them or we get into some kind of state that's an extreme, like bliss or emptiness, in which we're not really feeling very vital. We don't have a lot of energy for living life. It's more of an isolation from life. Bliss, emptiness, any kind of extreme state of altered consciousness. It just cuts us out from others. It doesn't unify us with others. When we rest as awareness, we come to understand the stuff, what really is the substance of all these emotional states. And it leads to tremendous compassion for the way we've lived our lives in terms of believing in all these states. And with that compassion that appears for ourselves, we automatically see what makes others tick. And we have compassion for them, so we no longer live in such bipartisan ways. We're not all torn up within ourselves, and then we're not torn up with others either. We experience unity within ourselves, we automatically experience unity with others. It's very straightforward. Did you have a question?
Yeah. This resting as awareness. For me, when you're saying this, there are all kinds of possibilities that rise up. It could be witnessing a thought or an emotion and separating myself from it It could be resting as identifying with it and, just become one with it. It could be resting as awareness of go to the beach in Rishikesh and have a tan and I'm resting. And it sounds so simple, but it's like slips beyond my reach because it could be anything and it's nothing.
Well, it's never been stuck to anything or to nothing. It's completely without extremes. To rest as awareness is that for short moments, repeated many times, to gain familiarity with awareness. In other words, let awareness be as it is, without any need to separate out and examine a thought or do anything at all about the thought. When there's rest as awareness, there's no need to describe a thought or do anything about it. So it's the end of elaboration, fabrication, and description of thinking. And it's also the end of seeking anything in thinking. In other words, seeking meaning or significance in a thought. That's what it is to let awareness be as it is. In the all-encompassing peer view of awareness, all these points of view proliferate and resolve, and the proliferation and resolution are points of view too. This happens spontaneously. It's naturally occurring. It's unable to be determined or predicted how these points of view will appear. When we just rest as awareness, we notice more and more that who we really are, all we've ever been, is this awareness that's inclusive of all of these indeterminate, unpredictable points of view. There's no need to hold to any of them or try to keep any of them because none of them are holdable or keepable. They're all in substantial pure space. This is what it means to rest as awareness, for short moments repeated many times until it becomes automatic in a totally uncontrived way. Completely uncontrived way. Awareness is uncontrived. It doesn't need to be made into anything. Even if you're sitting in meditation, it's equal to anything else you might be doing, running around, making love, working, studying. All of these, what I said at the beginning of the talk today was, it was said, flawless awareness is doing everything. So flawless awareness is thinking everything. Flawless awareness is emoting everything. All of these are just appearances of awareness. So every appearance, no matter what it is, whether it's a thought, emotion, experience, it has the two aspects of the label and the awareness that is its basic space. Through the compulsion to elaborate on points of view, through the addiction to points of view, it seems that there are only all these labels and that they describe a real world. When the basic space of awareness that is the essence of the thought, emotion, or appearance is allowed to be as it is, then it becomes more and more obvious that all these labels have these two aspects, and that there's never been awareness that occurred anywhere elsewhere than a point of view. All points of view are simply the dynamic energy of awareness. It's just through taking only the dynamic energy to be real. It seems like that's all that's real, all the words in the dictionary. But just like a dictionary poses no threat, no word or label poses a threat. We wouldn't feel overwhelmed by the word fear in the dictionary. And the appearance of the fear within ourselves is no different. If you take it to be something, then you may go ahead and live your whole life that way. I wouldn't suggest it. There's complete freedom from that because fear or any other label is already timelessly free. And, you don't have to rest as awareness. For you, if you just keep showing up here, conviction will dawn in you. I know that about you. So don't trouble yourself with resting. One moment, Joe. Is there something more about that?
Keep coming.
Uh-huh.
But when people experience different things like total fear, total love, like your example of lying on the beach in Rishikesh, I'm just wondering, my question is about the purity of the experience itself. For example, if someone was stabbing my child in front of my eyes, just about to, my total being would be in terror. Or with love, my total being would be with love. And in that way, would you say the total awareness and the experience are one and the same? Or melting into the sun on the beach beside the Ganges? Just that. The experience and the awareness of the experience are the same?
They're not two. They're inseparable. There's nothing to be done about terror. It's originally pure. And love is originally pure too. And the delicious sensation of basking in the sun alongside the Ganga, that's originally pure too. None of these are two. There have never been two. Everything is a single, non-dual expanse. And Anil, you had a question?
Resting in awareness may be easier at one place than the other. Resting in awareness may be easier in one place in comparison to other. Similarly, resting in awareness may be easier in the presence of a particular person than otherwise. Could you comment on that, please?
Yes, I can comment on that. Well, first of all, awareness is equal everywhere and with everyone. So there's no ramping up of awareness in some locations. But what is very natural and simple for us as human beings is that if we come together, and a lot of us are committed to the same thing, such as resting as awareness, or maybe some of us are resting as awareness without even trying to do so, because that's how resting as awareness always ends up. It's guaranteed that it'll end up as just awareness with not trying to do anything. If we come together and we're all committed to that, then it may feel like it's more intense in that situation. This is very natural. It's just like if we're with a bunch of people who are all afraid, then we might all feel afraid too. So you see, this is a simple human matter. It's not esoteric or mysterious or some kind of odd thing. The community of people resting as awareness is very nice because that reinforces and reaffirms our choice to live as awareness and to rest as awareness. So this is a very simple, practically understood, straightforward matter. Now, if we think that it's easier for us to rest as awareness in some circumstances than others, then it will be that way. It'll definitely be that way. Now, a lot of times when people meet me, they will say, oh, will you be my teacher? And I always say yes. I've never said no. So a lot of times when I meet people, they say, oh, I want to move somewhere so I can rest as awareness. Like there are people in this room, they wanted to change their job so they could rest as awareness, or they wanted to leave their family so they could rest as awareness. And I always say, well, you know, really, if you want me as your teacher, I would suggest you fulfill all your commitments. So that's what I say to people. You know, whatever your commitments are, these are your circumstantial points of view. They're part of your life. It's just the way things are. If you try to rearrange them, going to live somewhere where it'll be easier to rest as awareness, or whatever it might be, changing your job, then it'll seem like that's associated with resting as awareness, but it really never is. The most fruitful ground for resting as awareness is in the situation we're in, whatever it is, with the commitments we've made. And you know, we as a species really need to learn more about living that way. There's nothing special required to rest as awareness.
Nothing special is required. In any situation we can practice that, but just for the comparison's sake or better understanding sake.
For better understanding?
Yeah, means we come to Rishikesh most probably because many persons here are trying to rest in awareness in one method or the other. They may not be following the exact teachings, but they may be following some other methods. But that is what ultimately they are trying to do. And that is maybe the reason we are meeting here in Rishikesh. So that is what I was implying. Means one place, the practice may be much easier than the other places. And it can be done in other places also. Right? It's just a relative sort of thing.
Like there's a better energy.
Yes.
Oh.
Energy. I was avoiding that word, but
the love, wisdom, and energy of awareness, it's equal everywhere. It's equal everywhere. Now I'll give you a couple of examples, one from my own life, and then maybe one from the life of a friend, and then a story that I've heard about someone and that I've read about someone. Now, from my own life, I didn't know about Rishikesh 25 years ago, and I'd never met a guru, yet somehow within my own mind stream appeared the oldest practice and the most successful practice for complete what is called enlightenment or liberation or wisdom knowing. This appeared in my own mind stream. Where was I? I was in California, and I was living a very ordinary life, never even knowing the meaning of the word non-duality. So suddenly this just appeared in my mind stream. And when it came into full fruition for me, when all my points of view resolved in basic space, where was I? I was sitting in a Denny's restaurant having a cup of coffee, talking to a friend. So a Denny's restaurant, that's a very mundane place. It's kind of like a McDonald's, you know. So
maybe a saint has lived there.
Pardon?
Maybe a saint has lived there many, many years back.
Yeah, well, a saint has lived and is living in each of the chairs in this room. That's what I'll say about that. If we continue to marginalize who we are into saying, oh, it's only them, you know, these few, then it'll be impossible for us to come to terms with ourselves as we are as a species. I know you understand what I'm saying. So, you know, now I'll also describe a couple of other stories. One is the story of a very dear heart friend of mine, Wangdor Rinpoche, who is an elderly Tibetan Lama. He's a very high Tibetan Lama. although he would never call himself that. I'm calling him that. And he was telling me a story once. We were sitting around the dining room table at the Great Freedom Sanctuary in California, and he wanted to tell me about what he felt was the greatest accomplishment of his life. When he was a young man, about 30 years old, he was living in Tibet, and the year was 1959. And he was living there with his guru, Tuxi Rinpoche, and there were a lot of other disciples living there too. And of course, they'd always lived in this very wonderful way for years together. This fantastic High Lama, Tuxi Rinpoche, who held many wonderful teachings. What were they teachings about? Resting as awareness for short moments, repeated many times. He held many of these teachings, just like the teaching that's being given here. And suddenly, they saw that they needed to leave Tibet because the Chinese army was coming, and they had heard that there were lamas and disciples either being slaughtered or imprisoned everywhere. So they all felt like they needed to leave, but Tuxi Rinpoche did not want to leave. He didn't want to leave because he didn't feel he was physically able. He was a very, very big man, and he'd gotten quite debilitated, and he couldn't carry his weight and walk on foot out of Tibet. So what to do? They didn't know what to do. Some of them just left. They left their guru behind. They said, we're too afraid, we're going to leave anyway. But Wangdur Rinpoche, he would not leave. He wasn't going to leave Tibet unless his guru was leaving too. He was going to stay with the guru through thick and thin. And so what they did first was they hired what they call barbarians, mountain men, these huge Tibetans who live up in the mountains and are very, very strong. They hired some of them to carry Tuxi Rinpoche out, but you know, it's very mountainous there. So they picked him up and they tried to carry him, but they couldn't support him. They just collapsed. So they said, oh, what to do? So they went out and got a couple yaks, those enormous animals, and they strapped Tuxi Rinpoche up on the back of the yaks, and the yaks started climbing up the mountain, but they too totally collapsed. They could not carry the weight of Tuxi Rinpoche. Now, you know, the guru has many skillful means that come along with wisdom. So Wangdur Rinpoche now, he's a small man. He's about 5'6" by 5'6". I don't know what he was when he was 30, but now that's what he looks like. And he's always been rather small. So Tuxi Rinpoche said, I want you to carry me to India. And so Wangdur Rinpoche thought, how am I going to do that? How am I going to carry this guy to India? He's about 3 times bigger than I am. And so, you know, he just rested with that, and then he thought, okay, I am going to carry him to India. This is what my guru wants me to do, so this is what I'm going to do. My guru has directly instructed me to carry him to India. He said, Wangdur, you carry me to India. That's how I'm going to get there. Otherwise, I'm not going. So Wangdur Rinpoche put Tuxi Rinpoche on his back, and they all set out, the few of them that were left, and they started to walk to India. And when they walked to India, there were many of them who died along the way. They'd fall into an abyss or off a mountain trail, or they'd be crossing a tiny log over an abyss, and some of them had fallen and die, or they'd get sick and die. All the time on these narrow mountain trails, walking over the logs, Wangdur Rinpoche had Tuxi Rinpoche on his back. And of course, you know, they weren't silent. All the while the guru was probably giving him instruction. He was saying, rest imperturbably, Wangdur. But what I'm pointing out here, what I'm pointing out through this story is that their circumstances completely radically changed. All of a sudden, they went from this pastoral lifestyle, living in the mountainous countryside of Tibet, to being chased by the Chinese army in very dangerous circumstances where there were new thoughts and emotions every moment, totally unpredictable. They made it all the way to India. They made it all the way to India. And Wangdur Rinpoche told me this was the greatest accomplishment of my life, because I knew if I did not carry my guru to India, there would be many teachings that I wouldn't be able to receive because they'd die with him. And there would be many other beings who would not be able to benefit. So he said, this is the greatest accomplishment of my life. He found that he didn't need to be in any special circumstances, that when he did what his guru instructed within this context of benefiting the whole, benefiting all the people who would receive these teachings by him following the guru's instructions, then what happened? The intensification of timeless awareness. He didn't need a special circumstance in which to do that. This is what he found, and it was very powerful. Another story is of another Lama who left Tibet, Nyalsho Khenpo, who died just a few years ago. Wangdur Rinpoche is still living. And he was a great and high Lama in Tibet. He gave teachings, rest imperturbably without doing anything, he said, to thousands of Lamas, including the Dalai Lama. So he held these pinnacle teachings of Tibetan Buddhism and gave them to thousands of Lamas, sitting dressed in beautiful brocades on a golden throne. All of a sudden, he too was running from the Chinese army, chasing him by air and on foot and on horses and shooting at him. He too fled Tibet. Where did he end up? He was a sadhu begging along the Ganga in Rishikesh. He didn't have all of his retinue with him or his high esteem and praise from everyone. Then he ended up in Calcutta in a hotel where he was a dishwasher. All this time he felt, he said, depressed and sick. Depressed, mentally sick, and physically sick. But all the while, he said, there was greater and greater intensification of timeless awareness. He found he didn't need any special circumstances for his confidence and faith and certainty in timeless awareness to grow. All of the circumstances he found were equal. So these are very important stories, whether they're about me or anyone else, because it shows all of us that we're human beings just like the people described. And if they can rest as awareness with disturbing emotions and in disturbing situations, or, if they can go beyond needing a special situation in which to rest, then we can too. Now, these are very important stories too, because even though they had always lived in a certain way in Tibet that was very protected, they wanted most particularly to leave Tibet so these teachings would not die. They wanted this simple teaching to spread far and wide, and so they were willing within that context to give up their special circumstances and do what would be a benefit to the whole.